William is sassy, but yet doesn't say anything, but is still sassy.
Hi, I'm Madeline Cheney, and you're listening to episode 2 of The Rare Life, the story of William. In our conversation, Alyssa shares all about her 4-year-old son, William, who has a strong personality and is very loved by her family. He is also nonverbal, wheelchair bound, and blind due to various birth defects. She shares William's birth story, which contains possible triggers, so please listen with caution. We also talk about how Alyssa and her marriage has evolved because of their beautiful son. Alyssa is amazing. I am so thrilled to release my conversation with Alyssa as my debut parent episode. I learned so much from our conversations, both in this episode and her special topic episode, which releases next week. She is such a rock. Alyssa and I met through a mutual friend. Shout out to Hannah Mars for connecting us. Alyssa is a registered nurse working with patients battling acute leukemia, an occupation inspired by her son, which we will talk more about in the episode. Alyssa is a lover of tacos and napping. Let's dive in. Alyssa, thank you for sharing your heart today.
Yeah, no problem.
So let's talk about William. How would you describe William? Who is he?
William is sassy, but yet doesn't say anything, but is still sassy.
I love that.
And he is a character and he has so much personality.
Oh,
And he's cuddly and cute and lovey and just, I don't know, he's like the best kid ever. He's
oh,
awesome. We love him.
I love that. What are his medical struggles?
Oh, this is such a big, like, so he was born with a birth defect in his with his brain. And so it just with that just comes so many things with that. And so he has seizures, hydrocephalus, um, dysphasia, can't swallow, he has a feeding tube. He has issues with like hormones because his pituitary gland developed abnormally.
Hmm.
He has balance issues because his cerebellum, which controls your balance and everything, developed abnormally.
Hmm.
Developmental delays. He has vision impairments. Um, just a whole slew of things.
Yeah, a big laundry list. Um,
Uh,
so like, how does that translate over to like real life for you guys? I know he's in a wheelchair,
yeah.
right? Okay,
hmm
so like things like that, like what does life look like for him and for you guys with all of those medical diagnoses?
Life is like just it's for us it's normal.
Mhm.
And he's our firstborn, so it was just kind of this is the way it is. But when with somebody else who looks at our lives are full of
Mm.
doctor's appointments, surgeries, um, lots of like even with school, it's just different. You don't like the way he learns is different. You're not sitting there and saying, okay, 1, 2, 3, or ABC, or all those things. It's more like how this feels or how that feels or touch this leaf or touch my hand, and the way he
Mhm.
learns is different. A lot our lives are just very like, I don't know, it's very, we have the wheelchair and we have the doctor's appointments and we have the IEPs. It's very busy and it's very different. Like, I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah, totally. And he has a feeding tube. Is that a G
Yes.
tube?
Yeah, it's a G tube.
Okay.
He had an NG tube for a long time and then we
Oh,
got
it's
the
the
G tube.
worst. Kimball had an MG, an OG. Do you know what an OG is? Like no one even
Yeah.
knows what that is because it's so rare. But yeah. Um, you mentioned that becoming a nurse was inspired by your son. So that must have happened after he was born that you went into nursing.
Yes, I was going to school at BYU, Idaho, and I was going to be
Mm.
a marriage and family therapist.
Okay.
So that was a big change.
Yeah.
And then I was just in the hospital so much, and I loved the nurses. And I always told myself I was not smart enough to be a nurse.
Mm,
And so I never did those classes. I never did anatomy and physiology. I just didn't even touch it because I was like, there's no way I can do this.
right.
And when Will was born, I had to learn all of these things, and I couldn't say, I'm too dumb to do this. It was my son. I had to do it.
Right. Right.
And not only did I do it and did I learn it, but I was like, this is cool. I like this.
Mm,
And so I was like, so everybody was like, you should be a nurse. You should be a nurse. And looked into it, and I got into school, and I love it. I love being a nurse. It's
that's
awesome.
awesome. That is so cool. And I think it's so neat to see these paths that our children take us on. Like you would never ask for them to have these struggles, but it's cool to see what positives come out of it.
Oh yeah, I would have never even thought about being a nurse or going to none of that stuff
Right.
unless I had William. Like, there's no way. I would have never even I was like, I ain't touching that with a 10-foot pole. I ain't going near that science building. No. But
Right.
I love it. I loved it. And I did well in nursing school. It was great.
That's so cool. What was that like when you first found out that his body was not forming typically?
So I was at school at BYU, Idaho.
Mhm.
So everybody was getting pregnant and everybody was getting married. And I was pregnant with two of my really, really good friends. And I just expected everything to just work out the way it was supposed to. And when we found out about his birth defect, I just was very shocked.
Yeah.
And I just felt like I was like, oh, I'm not like everybody else. And it was very hard to be in that environment
Mm,
where everybody was having babies, everybody was getting pregnant, everybody was having these baby showers. And I was the odd man out, you know?
yeah.
It was very hard. When we found out that he had a birth defect, it was probably one of the hardest times of like hardest moments of my life.
Right.
And it was hard because they told us he would die. They said he will not live past 30 weeks.
Oh my
So
gosh.
and I was 23 weeks along.
Mm,
So I was like, oh my gosh, in like a couple weeks, they told me he'd be stillborn. So I was like expecting to deliver a stillborn baby
wow.
in the middle of Rexburg, Idaho. I
Yeah.
was like, oh my gosh. And
Oh,
I had a lot of anxiety. I had a lot of fear. And my pregnancy was so happy and so normal, and everything was the way it was supposed to be.
mhm,
And then in like 5 minutes, when the doctor found the birth defect and told me, or like 15 minutes or whatever,
mhm,
I changed to fear and dread and anxiety, and
mhm.
it was all of the negative feelings. It was really, really hard. It was one of the hardest times of my life.
Wow. Uh, so what happened? I mean, obviously he lived. Can you tell that story?
Yeah, so we were in Rexburg, Idaho, and we were in like this tiny little like doctor's office. The doctor saw on the ultrasound his skull just didn't form. He said that he described it as a horseshoe. So if you look at like a horseshoe and it's just a U shape, and then the skull didn't complete.
Oh wow.
And then they saw brain tissue was deformed and everything. And so they told me he would pass away, and they offered me an abortion. We declined the abortion. It was the way we
Mhm,
felt and what we wanted to do. And
mhm,
and they said, what do you want to do? And the way I coped with it was, I was like, I want to do everything I possibly can to have this baby live, because
mhm.
in my head I was like, if he dies, I can go through that and I can say, well, we did this and we did this, and
Right.
you know what I mean? There's nothing else that
Yes.
could have been
I did
done.
everything I could
I
have.
did everything I could, and it happened,
Mhm.
and so it was out of my control.
Right.
So we saw more specialists. So we were up in
Mm.
Rexburg, and we would travel to Salt Lake at the
Oh
University of
man.
Utah, which
Which
is
is
where
4
I work
hours.
now. I
Yeah, like
know, it was a
4-hour
4-hour
drive.
drive,
That's a
and I
long
work
drive.
there now, so it's crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy.
And we traveled to the University of Utah. We saw the high risk OBs there,
Okay.
and we decided, should we have vaginal birth, C-section? What should we do? How should we go about this? Um, and we decided to have a C-section, a planned C-section, because
Okay.
of his head. And
Really quick, did Did they tell you there was any chance of him surviving, or at this point were they just telling you he will not live 100% guaranteed?
100% guaranteed he will not live.
Oh, wow.
That's what they were
Okay.
telling us.
Okay.
They were like, there's no way. We had a casket picked out. We had a
Wow.
burial plot picked out. We had a graveside service arranged.
Oh,
Like, I
man.
remember when we drove down to his birth, we packed up like pictures and just to set up things for the graveside service.
Oh my
And
gosh.
we had a little outfit to bury him in. We
So
had
you
little
totally
booties.
were expecting this
Oh,
to
we
end
were
in his
total.
death.
Our plan was that he would be born. There's a little window in the C-section room at the University of Utah, and they pass the babies through the window into the NICU. And the plan, I mean, they had like life support on standby. They were going to immediately intubate, put him on life support. We were going to spend time with him, and then we were going to take him off life support and be with him until he passed away.
Oh, okay.
That was the plan.
Okay.
And we went to the room, to the hospital, and then we, had the C-section. We were like the first C-section of the day. And the NICU team came in and, okay, we got this on standby. This is what's going on. The social worker came in, it was the whole big shebang. My husband's family was there. My mom was there. And the doctor came in before the C-section and said, I want you to know when your baby's born, he's probably not going to cry. He's going to be limp and he's going to be blue. Like, she was trying to prepare us, right?
Right.
And when he came out, he cried. He cried right away.
Wow.
And they immediately, she showed him to me. So he was like awake enough so that she could show him to me. And then they passed him through the window. And then once he was settled, they were going to come and get Ben, my husband. And then he was going to go back. And then, we were going to do like a blessing, like a ceremonial blessing for our religion and everything. And then they took him through the window, and we waited and waited and waited. And we didn't know what was going on. And then they came back and got Ben. And then the nurse said, we're ready for Dad. And we're like, okay, here we go. We've been preparing for this. We're all like ready for this plan that we made.
Yeah.
And the nurse said, Mom, he's breathing on his own.
Oh my gosh.
And when she said that, I like I'm getting choked up right now just thinking, like, it just overcame me. I just started crying and crying and crying. And my husband went there and he did fine. He had his birth defect, but he was breathing on his own.
Wow.
And his heart was fine. His lungs were fine. It was just, he just had this birth defect. And so it was, so that's like how he was born. It was a really emotional, like, it was like, we're having a baby. It was great. And then it was like, oh, our baby's going to die. And it was like, oh, our baby's living again. Oh, our baby has to be in the NICU it was just this roller coaster of emotion.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Wow. And so he went to the NICU in primary children?
Yeah. He's at Primary Children's NICU.
Okay. And what were they doing for him there?
They were trying to figure out how to fix his head.
Oh, okay.
Basically. So he was diagnosed with cutis aplasia. If you look it up, it's like a quarter size. It's just the bone and the skin doesn't develop, but his was like the whole back of his head.
Oh, wow.
Was open. Like, his brain was exposed. And it was this miraculous birth defect that nobody's ever seen. And so neurosurgery and plastic surgery were trying to work together and figure out how do we close his head. We can't like let him go home.
Right.
So that's what they were trying to figure out. And then he had other complications along the way. Like, that's when they found out about hydrocephalus, and then he started having seizures. And so they had to figure out the seizures and, that kind of thing.
Okay. What is hydrocephalus? Can you define that?
The way I learned it in nursing school was water on the brain.
Okay.
Like, that's like the,
that's like literally
if you
what
diagnose,
it is.
like in Latin, you translate it, it's water on the brain. You have cerebral spinal fluid in your brain and spinal cord.
Okay.
And it's constantly flowing. Hydrocephalus is where it can't flow, basically, and it just builds. So the fluid in his head would just build and build and build.
What effect does
a lot of pressure?
Oh, pressure. Okay. What does that look like? Like, how does that affect him?
So here's what's complicated: is normal hydrocephalus is they have these certain signs that they have hydrocephalus.
Mm.
His was different because he didn't have skull
Oh,
on the back of
wow.
his head. So it was like the hydrocephalus didn't really have it could expand, if that made sense, because he didn't have
Yeah.
anything containing it.
Oh, yeah.
When they did fix his head and put skin, which he still doesn't have bone, he just has skin.
Okay.
Um, Still, it was able to expand. It would cause pressure because there was something there now.
Mm.
Um, he gets really lethargic. And then it puts pressure points on the brain, so it can cause like vomiting, it can cause
Mm.
seizures, it can cause a lot of different things.
Wow.
So, but
Okay.
the treatment for that is a shunt, so he just basically has a drain in his head, and he's had it
Oh,
for 3 years.
okay. Wow. Um, so how is his head protected without the skull? You said it's still just skin?
Yeah, it's just skin,
Okay.
and he kind of just does his own thing. Like, we were super nervous. Like, I guess to describe life with Will was that
Mm-hmm.
at first it's like, oh my gosh, you can't touch this kid. He can't go anywhere. It's super fragile. Just stay there. And
Mm-hmm.
then, like, as life goes on, he would do little things. Like, he would lift up his head, and we're like, whoa. And then we're like, okay, he's fine. And then he would roll, and then we're like, oh, and then, or okay, he's fine. You know what I mean? And so he
Mm-hmm.
kept doing things. And then there was like one time he fell off the bed, and we were like, if he ever falls off the bed, this is an emergency because he doesn't have
Mm.
skull.
Yeah.
And he fell off the bed, and it was right before one of my finals.
No.
Like, my husband called me and was like, he fell off the bed. And I went into my final like, okay, I'll be
Oh
there
my
after my final.
gosh.
And like, we rushed him to the emergency room, and he was fine.
Okay.
And it was just things like that. And so we
Mm-hmm.
always were like, he needs a helmet, he needs this, he needs that. And then he just kind of showed us along the way that he was okay. And
Yeah.
we've just had to learn, because like, and the doctors are like, we're just gonna have to see what he does, because we've never, this is a case we don't know.
Okay. So with that, so when we talked about earlier, we talked about his like rareness level or like his, I don't know, his rank of rareness. So like you said, he's like the only one in the world with his specific cerebral palsy. Is that right?
Yeah, I guess technically it's cerebral palsy.
Mm-hmm.
It's like part of the diet. You can like put it under the long
Yeah.
list.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, he has neuro, like, brain um abnormalities, so he fits
Mm-hmm.
under like cerebral palsy or microcephaly, or all those like neuro
Right.
diagnoses. But like, his specific, like, there's no other kid that was born with this birth defect who has the exact like outcomes, or you know what I mean, like the exact
Mm-hmm.
birth defects, the exact
Mm-hmm.
diagnosis, all of the things that he has with his defect and everything.
Yeah. And
So
I wonder if part of that, like when you were talking about how they told you like it's a lethal diagnosis, right? Isn't that the term? Um, where they didn't expect him to live. I wonder if that's part of it. I wonder if a lot of these children that are born with like a more similar form of what he has don't usually live. Have you like I don't have you ever thought of that way
yeah,
before?
and we actually had his neurosurgeon tell us, he said, babies with these kind of defects, they're miscarriages.
Okay.
He said usually they're miscarriages. He's like, for some reason your body just didn't miscarry him.
Wow.
And that always stuck with me,
Yeah.
because I had a miscarriage later, and I was always like, maybe I just, this sounds so bad, but I was like, maybe I just make babies this way. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
like, maybe that's really messed up in my head, but like I was like, maybe, but I think if I go down that road, it just gets too stressful.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I do think that, though. I think that sometimes those kids just, maybe they don't make it.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, I'm a carrier for what Kimball has, and I've had a lot of miscarriages, and it is like really chilling to be like, Kimball, like it's a miracle that I didn't miscarry him. Like it really is this thing where it's like I almost didn't have Kimball in my life, and I'm sure that's how you feel about William. Um, how has William changed your life and changed you as a person?
Oh, that is I mm, I don't so many things. So many things. Like I was just like I don't know how to say it. Well, first of all, I'm a nurse now and I have a
Mm-hmm.
wonderful job that I love. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't think I could have ever found that.
Yeah.
Um, but more than that, I know that like for myself, I just see things, I see the world differently. You know, you see the world in a different light. You are grateful for things that are you wouldn't be grateful for before, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense.
Totally.
I know for a big thing for me is like with Will, like, you know, you probably know this with the IEPs, and they're like, oh, goal is not met. This is not met.
Mm-hmm.
He's not meeting these standards. Like he's developmentally not meeting these things.
Right.
And for me, I've always just been grateful that he's there,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't worry about things like that. Does that make sense? Like I don't
Yeah.
worry about, is he rolling? Is he this? And that's gone into other aspects of my life where, you know, you just kind of go with the flow, I guess. Like you just kind of
Mm-hmm.
take it as it comes, and you deal with it, and you have an open mind, and you don't I feel like I don't get caught up on things as much
Yeah.
or worried about things as much. And life is just happier, and I'm more grateful, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm more open about things, and I don't know, so many
Yeah.
things. I could go on.
I think it changes your perspective when you fight for them to live, and maybe even several times over their lives, and you that's just not this guarantee there, and then all of a sudden them just being alive is enough. They don't need to do these different things that you may have. I don't know. I'm speaking from my experience, I guess. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but like,
No, I agree with that. It's
yeah.
like I like I you just don't get caught up. Like they're not
Mm-hmm.
rolling. Like what's wrong? It's like
Mm-hmm.
I'm just happy that he's vocalizing. I'm just happy that he's here, and I'm happy that he's happy.
Yeah.
And I get that all the time with people, like, what can he do? What can he do? Can he do this? Will he ever be able to do this? And I like maybe, and people are maybe let down by my answer, because I'm like, I don't know. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like, I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know what he's going to do. And I'm like, but whatever, we're going to let him run the show,
Right.
and we'll just let life come, and we'll deal with it when it comes. And
Mm-hmm.
it's helped me to not be so focused on the future, so anxious about the future, and just focusing on the now, focusing on
Yeah.
here. And it's good for my anxiety.
That's like amazing to hear you say that. Like, having a child with these special needs helps your anxiety. I love that. Alyssa, how has this changed how you feel about yourself, like your view of yourself?
You know, that's a really good question. And I don't think anybody's ever asked me that.
We're getting personal.
Yeah, no, let's do it. um I like when you said that, like my mind immediately went to one thing and then went to like the complete opposite. Like I think of myself as a strong woman, like
Mm-hmm.
like me myself. Like I'm
Right.
like, look at who I am. Like I'm strong, I'm
Mm-hmm.
independent, I can do anything. But then the other side of me, I kind of go back to that young woman sitting in the doctor's office being told that her son has a birth defect, and thinking, what's wrong with me? Is there something wrong with my body? Is there something wrong
Yeah.
with me? Um and the more that I see William, and the more that I see how he is and who he's becoming, that little young woman that was told that in the doctor's office kind of starts fading away. And she comes up a little bit, but she kind of fades away. And I get more of
Mm,
the, look at what I can do. Like, look at what I've
yeah.
become. And I'm really like happy with who I am, and I'm comfortable with who I am. And I've noticed that I'm not so worried about what people think about me.
Yeah.
Um, but I was before,
Right.
like when we first took William out in public, like that was hard, but
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm more confident in myself, and I'm more like unapologetically myself, I guess.
Yeah. That's awesome. I relate with a lot of that stuff. I think, I don't know. I think it kind of gives you this like mentality of like, I can do anything. Like, bring it on. Which I always like, Justin, my husband's always like, don't say that, Mads. But I'm like, really? Like, when you've gone through really hard things, it's like, well, I got through that. Like, I
Well, and
made of
it,
tough stuff.
like, you think, what's the worst thing that could happen if I lose my
Mm-hmm.
kid? Well, I was there.
Right.
And look, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was there, or I've been there, and we've
Mm-hmm.
been preparing, because we don't know how long he has with us, and you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
you kind of think like, what's the, like, my mom would say to me all the time when I get like upset about work or something, and she goes, this is not the hardest thing you've been
Mm-hmm.
through. And I'm like, and I feel that way. I'm like, this is not, like, if I can get through what I went through, like, so scared my son was gonna die, and then he didn't, and then this roller coaster of emotions, if I can get through that, I feel like I can go through anything. And I just I have that confidence. It's bad, I probably shouldn't say that
No,
because
I
it'll
know.
probably
It
happen.
feels like you're like, knock on wood. I
But
love
still, I
that.
feel like I can do it, and it'll be okay. Everything will be okay.
Yeah. I love that. One last question, and then we'll wrap it up. How has this affected your marriage and your
So
relationship?
I think it's gotten us so much stronger.
Hmm.
And I was raised by a single mom. My dad left when I was in high school.
Hmm.
And I was like, I kind of grew up with this. When it gets hard, the guys leave.
Hmm.
And when I had William, Ben was there. And not only was he there, but he has been so invested in William. And he
Hmm.
loves William. And he's just the best special needs dad. I'm sure you feel that way about your husband too, but I'm sorry. Ben is the best special needs dad.
It's amazing.
He makes, like, William can't see, right? He can't see, and so he kind of can see light, and we make it dark so he can see better, and Ben will make like a fort in the living room to block out the light, and he'll sit with William, and he'll like try to help him see the light. And I just think, I'm like, I just he's just so amazing, and he said that about me too. And I think
Hmm.
we've seen how amazing each other are, and
Yeah.
we've been there, we've been through it.
Hmm.
And I mean, I was never alone in the NICU crying. I had him to go through it, and we depended on each other a lot.
Yeah.
And our marriage is a lot better now.
That's amazing.
I mean, it wasn't even bad to begin with.
Right.
It just got so much better. I'm so in love
Yeah.
with him because he is just an amazing man and an amazing father.
That's
And I
so,
just see how great he is.
that's great to see someone go through something hard and see what they're really made of. And I know sometimes that ends really badly. And that's what, like, asking you that question, I knew that your marriage is great. And that's why I asked you. Otherwise, I wouldn't have, because I saw on your Instagram your post about your marriage with him and how it's transformed. Uh, and it really does make or break you, like something this hard. Um, and it, I don't know. I think that because I agree with you, and I've also had a really good experience with my marriage since having Kimball. And I think it's something I don't take for granted, because I know that a lot of marriages fall apart when something this hard happens. And I don't really want to end it on that note exactly.
Well, you know what though? I know marriages that did not end well with having a special needs child. And oh my gosh, that woman is the strongest woman. Like, a single mom taking care of a special needs child, like, she is a boss woman. Yeah. And I'm like I look at my mom, and my mom is the most powerful and strong woman I know. Like, she is amazing, and I love her. And she's a rock. And you know, and it goes back to how you think about yourself when you go through this. You're like, I can go through anything. I can do this. Because, you know, it's all about you. Like, even though you're married and you have a marriage and you love your partner, it's still like, you gotta love yourself, right?
Yeah.
I love me, and I know my beliefs and my values, and I know who I am. And man, single moms, I mean, no, there's probably single dads out there. You guys are great too, but I've only experienced single moms, and oh man, they are the strongest women.
Amen to that. We're going to one last question. I'll edit out myself saying one last question like 3 times. One last question. Let's end it on. Are there any last thoughts about William? Yeah, like last, like your, just, I don't know, those deep emotions about William and how much you love him.
He doesn't talk. He does not talk. He does not walk. He doesn't count. He doesn't tell me what he's thinking. But oh my gosh, I love him. And I love spending time with him. And I have so much fun with him. And you think, like, from a kid that can't speak and a kid that can't do these things that all the other kids do, but you have this deep relationship with him where, you know, I have this thing, because he can't speak to me, and sometimes I get worried about him because we're moms, let's be real. and I just look at him and I'm like, just are you okay? Like, just tell me you're okay. Just tell me. And I can't describe it. It's not like he doesn't smile. It's just this like look that he gives me, and he can't see, but he like looks at me, and I just get this overwhelming like feeling or connection from him. And it's just like, Mom, it's okay. I'm fine. And it's just this, it's hard to explain how deep of a connection I feel with William. And I didn't breastfeed him. I didn't hold him all the time, and I didn't have the birth plan, and I didn't have the, you know, he doesn't talk, and we don't do the coloring, and we don't do the regular mom things that everybody does, but I still feel connected to him, and I still feel bonded with him, and he is my lovey, and I love him, and he's the bubs, and I have this deep connection with him, and we communicate together, and I just love him. He's my baby.
Alyssa, I love that. That's amazing. You are amazing, and William is amazing. And I love how you summed that up. Oh, well, thank you. Everyone's amazing. Well, thank you so much for opening your heart to us and sharing your experience with William and your experience of being his mom. Alyssa can be found on Instagram at alyssa.reedhead. Photos of Alyssa and her amazing family are on the website therarelifepodcast.com under episode 2. So if you're interested in putting a face to the story, head there. Be sure to listen to Alyssa's special topic coming out next week as she shares her take on quality of life. I learned so much from that conversation. Do not miss it. See you then.